against reason, but it's guided by God. But also we have to respect the inalienable rights of the human person, which cannot be conceded or deprived by society or the state. The scope of civil law is certainly more limited than that of the moral law, but civil law cannot contradict right reason without losing its binding force of conscience. Every human-made law is legitimate insofar as it is consistent with the natural moral law recognized by right reason, and insofar as it respects the inalienable rights of every human person. So we, even in dialogue about religious and moral matters, we do have to argue in the marketplace, so to speak, on the basis of reason, the reasonableness of what we're saying, and also respecting always the inalienable rights of others. I'm going to skip that and just move on. Basically, what's the difference then? Just a few comments on canon law. I brought here the code of canon law. This is the law of the church. Basically, maybe just say a few comments on that, and then we finish up in about 5 minutes. The law of the Catholic Church is what we call canon law, and it's, however, it's a very complicated thing. It was only the last few years I began to discover a bit about Sharia law, and I realized how complicated and how misinformed many people are about Sharia law. And I can say by analogy, a lot of Irish people in recent debate are very misinformed by canon law. First of all, they don't understand what it's about. First of all, not all of the Church's law is found in canon law. There are a lot of moral principles. We have divine law, we have natural law, and we have what we call ecclesiastical law. Most of natural law or divine law we find in the Bible, the commandments. A lot of it is rooted in the commandments. We don't need to appeal. That is the highest kind of there, and in the teaching of Jesus Christ. That is where we find most of our law, which is the highest law revealed by God. However, we have also an ecclesiastical law, canon law, which is a man-made law, which by and large is legislated or given or promulgated by the Pope or the whole Church. And that's basically what I put. This is not, even though this is canon law, it's not all man-made law, because canon law has to respect divine and natural law. We also find natural law and divine law. An example would be, let's say we take marriage. For the Catholic, marriage could have 3 different levels. First of all, by natural law, what the Catholic says is that marriage must be between a man and a woman. By divine law, we say that between 2 baptized Catholics, that marriage is sacramental. That makes no sense to anyone else who is not a member of the church, who is outside the church. It's a faith dimension to the law. So we have, and by ecclesiastical law, or man-made law, basically we say that when you marry, it's basically deals with how you marry. You must marry a priest and 2 witnesses in a church. That's basically what the law, and only certain people who are qualified, or some people who are not qualified to marry. For example, you can't marry your sister, you can't marry your first cousin without permission, and so on. These are man-made laws, but they can be changed or dispensed depending on the circumstances. And that's the difference between ecclesiastical law, or canon law, and divine or natural law. That a proper ecclesiastical or religious authority can dispense from those where it can, in certain circumstances, where it is the ecclesiastical authority can't dispense from natural or divine law. Even the Pope is bound by natural and divine law. He can't dispense from those either. So basically, that's what the Code of Canon Law, it tries to achieve. Then it applies itself to like the Catholic churches and religious community. It applies the same principles that apply to any civil society. Where there is society, there is law. But the church is a community which is theologically defined. And as a member, you have to understand what those kind of models of church would be. But then the law then governs the public order of the Roman Catholic Church, and it can only be understood in the context of a religious community, and it can only be understood in the context of faith. It enables the church to achieve her spiritual goals and mission, to give stability in order to the institution of the church, to protect the ecclesial rights of members. Ecclesial rights are distinguished from natural rights. Natural rights come from being human, the dignity of the person. Ecclesial rights, that is rights to come from baptism, and enshrines the values and standards of the community. I gave you those examples already. Relationship with civil law, even canon law, recognised in certain circumstances civil law is to be adopted. For in Ireland, for example, canon law allows you to marry by natural law, for example, you're allowed to marry at puberty. Canon law establishes at 16 for a man, 14 for regard. However, since the church finds itself in many societies throughout the world, canon law allows the local church to adopt the civil legislation in that area. So in Ireland, it adopts what the civil law states are the minimum age for marriage. And that's an example of where it canonizes, so to speak, canon law, or civil law. Church then in Ireland, basically just to say that the simple regard of how does the state or how does the law, the civil law regard canon law in Ireland, basically regards it as foreign law. In other words, that if there's a dispute within the church or between two Catholics, but if the issue doesn't affect the rights of the other person, and if the matter is purely religious or ecclesiastical, if the two subjects are ecclesiastics, so to speak, or it's a priest and a bishop, or between an employee and a bishop or priest, the state then takes canon law, and if there's no other law in the matter, the state then, or the judge, adopts canon law and implements canon law. And there have been a number of cases of that in Ireland in the last 100 years. So it basically considers it foreign law and interprets it and applies it as foreign law. Anyhow, look, as I said, I just gave you a framework. It's a complex issue and there's many different levels. What I try to do is show you that there's a long history to this, that the church hasn't been always the best example in this in history. I think in recent decades and centuries it has moved on and it has adopted what is perhaps the proper approach, that is the freedom to sign up to the Declaration of Religious Freedom, so on. Having signed up for that, it doesn't shy away from looking for its own space, for its own voice in the marketplace, to declare or to preach its values, to teach its values, to worship or to congregate. So therefore, that's where it has moved in history. But within the church, then there's various levels of law, canon law, divine law, ecclesiastical, and natural law, and so on. That's the kind of, so it's a complex, and then whether that debate whether Catholics should legislate or vote for have their teachings enshrined in civil law, that's a difficult enough area too. There are different kind of lines of thought on that. Whereas the orthodox one is that the church seeks to teach the public, but it leaves it to the conscience of the Catholic voter whether it is appropriate to vote that into legislation or the constitution. Anyhow, that's basically, I hope you get some idea of it from what I was saying. Anyway, thanks very much. Any questions?